Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on very important topic, education and youth. And you know that World Talent Economy Forum, we are working with 22,000 institutions in Asia Pacific. Millions of people already engaged with World Talent Economy Forum. For one of our healthcare projects, actually, Professor David Smith helping World Talent Economy Forum as well as our government agencies. Uh, I want to give a special thanks to Professor David Smith and your friends. And let's start discussions on education and youth. I know all of you have very interesting idea about education and very interesting project for youth. I'm sure today's discussion will be very helpful for our audience. Professor David Smith.
Yes.
Well, Sharif, thank you. Yeah, I actually have a ton of comments on education, but uh, I was on a broadcast yesterday where with a couple of academic leaders and had fun with those, but I'll probably save some of those for later here. But the topic with this one is really the education, youth, and COP27. And the United Nations framework for the Convention on Climate Change, or COP27, is just concluded. And you begin to see what's coming out of it. And, some of the bottom line is this, the world still needs a giant leap forward on climate change and that it must become involved. Dr. Talif has done a fantastic job of talking on your programs about how everyone needs to be involved, and yet a lot of people still are struggling to believe in climate change and its impact. But what we're seeing around the world is, in some of the surveys done with the youth, is young people are beginning to lose some hope around this.
Mm.
Some of the interesting comments is that we're living in a climate crisis we thought we wouldn't have to yet to face. But there is a lot of really hope and faith that the young people will be the ones who step up and start fighting for climate action. Uh, because many of the older folks are kind of demoralized against it. And as Dr. Talib said, many feel like there's no point in fighting against climate change. Um, Out of COP27, though, there were explicit areas set aside for youth. There's an explicit youth innovation area at COP27 that was just really beginning to pull it together. Uh, and there actually, for COP27, there were dedicated invitees to of the youth to COP27 in Egypt, and how it was there. And the youth began to see that they believed they had a marginalized voice, but they're understanding that the youth, that uh, women, men, children, refugees from developing countries are experiencing climate change actually more intensively than many people in developed nations. And they're working to begin to change it. The other thing that in the youth education part of COP27, there's a position statement that came out of COP27 that climate education should be for all. And young people at the COP27 saw that climate education is the key to greater global action on climate change. And they were at the very front of the demand to try to make this type of training available. One of the persons that was quoted in a bunch of it is that one of the young delegates from Afghanistan was very vocal that the people of Afghanistan are experiencing extreme climate change now. They were devastated by droughts, floods, freezing winters, and the humanitarian crisis there was going up. And again, COP27 put funds in place to deal with that type of disaster. But one of the things I was amazed as I was going through some of the outputs from COP27 is where the youth really came up and did an exceptional job at mobilizing. If you begin to look, there was a delegation from Asia Pacific where they created their own informal delegation and went to COP27 independently of the nation states they were part of. And they were very vocal in trying to put the education together. Now, there's a lot of education techniques that we need to talk about later. The fact that the classic education approach that we've used for hundreds of years probably will not work as we're trying to address this, but it is an area that is very, very important as we look at how do we cluster together the resources, how do we change culture, how do we get nations to unite to solve this. And the youth, as they have in many times in the past, will be a force to reckon with it, and one that education, both led by youth and given to youth, is going to be extremely important. So, Sharif, I think that's probably enough opening remarks.
Thank you, Professor David Smith. Now I request Professor Donald.
Well, I didn't see that the topic was specifically education in COP27. But I was thinking, more generally about education and youth, and I think that it's a very lumpy thing. At one time, I was working with a group that was trying to help educate Syrian refugee children. It was a group that was it was the World Philanthropy Forum, Google, and the U.S. State Department. And the issue there was that because so many Syrians were scattered and living in places like Beirut, basically in the streets and in refugee camps, that when the Syrian civil war ended and they returned to Syria, they would have had a huge gap in their education, and so there would be a generation of Syrian children that were poorly educated, if at all. And in order for Syria to rebuild itself, it wouldn't have the people available to be able to do it. So the goal was to try and figure out how to educate those children. Listening to the Google people, it was pretty fascinating because we broke into groups, and one of the people there was a woman who had a school or a place where Syrian refugee children lived in Beirut, and she worked in the refugee camps. And she said that what the people were proposing was absolutely ridiculous, because the people at Google were coming up with ideas about how they were going to take literature and automatically translate it into Arabic and provide all these wonderful high-tech solutions. And she said, they don't even have power. They don't have computers. How are they going to use all this stuff? She said, this is absolutely ridiculous. So she said, they're going to go home and their mothers are illiterate. Their mothers aren't going to be able to help them use their computers or help teach them things. These people are so absolutely removed and remote from the actual problems that are being faced that it's laughable. And I mean, that was a big eye opener for me. And I actually really wanted to go to Beirut and see her school, but she got ill, and I never got the chance to do that, which is I'm kind of sad about. But in any event, I think that when we think about it, the world is a very lumpy place, and there's an organization in the Los Gatos Rotary put together these things which are they're solar powered lights. And actually, I'm working with another guy now that helps make those things. And what they are is you just put the light outside during the day, and they charge up, and then at night you bring them inside and you have light. And for lots and lots of people in the world, that's an incredible, wonderful thing for the education of children, because then they come home at night, they can actually read and study because they don't have lights inside of their homes at night. So when we think of education, we have to kind of be aware of what the world's really like, and start thinking about the kinds of things that we can do that could make a difference for people. We tend to be very Eurocentric or American centric, and think about things that we want to do in our countries. And my point is that there's really no one solution for it at all. And I'll come back to talk about them. When I come around again, I'll talk about my thoughts about America and Europe and some of the issues that we're facing too. And so what I'm really basically saying is that when we're looking at education, we need to look at building, the basic infrastructure so that people can actually get an education. And that's kind of got to be a huge priority for us.
Excellent, Professor David Smith. I think you really understand the emerging economy problem. But I want to ensure, in 2012, first time I introduced programming in Dhaka. So that time many people laugh at me. They said, "Hey, school student cannot do this kind of things." But good things is that even I'm very happy when I come back to Bangladesh. This year, the World Cup of Programming World Cup happened in Dhaka after 7, 8, 10 years. So that is the progressions of my country. So things is that we can start, we can learn from the global community, and definitely this is very important. We have to know that 3 billion people still they do not have internet connections, they do not have laptop, they do not have proper support. But definitely we can collaborate with developed world, they can guide us. And developing nations also have different corporations, so we can motivate them, we can guide them, we can help them, and they can provide support resources to our youth community. That is the way actually World Talent Economy Forum working. And I want to give special thanks to Professor David Smith. Already he engaged with, and he committed to engage with 50,000 healthcare workers. And I'm sure in between 1 year, we can uplift this 50,000 healthcare worker from Dhaka. Dr. Musa, you are from developing nations, you are from Africa, from Morocco. So what interesting things you want to add, what kind of problem you want to introduce, and definitely we have our expert panelists, they may give more interesting solutions for emerging economy problem, especially in education sectors.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. It's my pleasure to be with you today, talking about education as the most important thing that we can do to face all the problems that we have in all the world, and use as the power, the power for humans. Use is the power that can do anything. So we have to to concentrate and just about use. So I'm talking about first in my talk. I'm going to talk about my personal, experience regarding to youth and education, and my second talk I'm going to discuss what happened, in COP27 about youth and education. So first I'm going to talk about my personal, experience regarding the education and youth. That I attend a lot of, of conference with UNESCO, with United Nations, a lot of, global education forum. So let me say that my contribution, about leading education, in the world with international award, but this participation in international conference and forums, and also invited as an official speaker. So let me say that my opinion that the greatest contribution is the technology of the 21st century and its impact on many areas like in education, in health, in energy, in transportation, in aviation, and tourism and industry. And I'm going to talk about also the effect of it, in all sector, in healthcare and in aviation. For example, as I work for aviation, so by spreading the adoption of this new technology in education and all the world, as a whole, I published book about it, research paper, and I mentioned as a reference, about what I did. So as we wrote to change the idea of education to suit work and the modern life, and that education is not a stage in a person's life, but rather has become something inherent to him in all stages and at all times, places, and all. We desperately need education, to face, all the crises like climate change, like economy problem, like COVID-19, a lot of, of society crisis can help with, education or with new technology. So ambitions for education, are essentially captured in SDG number 4. We have to achieve it in 2030, the 17 SDG. So we are responsible for coordinating the international commitment to achieve this goal. So, partnership, so policy guidance, so capacity development, monitoring, and advocacy. So we are in a unique position to support member states in achieving this 17 SDG. So, for example, COVID-19, climate change, economic crisis, and war have inflicted, a lot worldwide on children learning and youth learning and well-being before the 2030s. For example, Pakistan, what's happened in Pakistan due to, the problem or crisis of climate change, they stopped, education and they think about, for a meal or food or for something like that. So most of the country have relied, on alternative, learning, solutions, the use of the technology. That's what's happened, in COVID-19 for, remote, learning or something like that. Especially we have, the new technology like tactile internet. It means like zero distance. So any teacher, in the world can teach, in any country of those. So on 100 million additional children than before fail to demonstrate basic reading skills. The poorest and most volunteers children are being, because of the crisis. Many kids risk never returning to school. Some are forced into children marriage or children labor because of what's happened, due to the crisis that we face. So education, losses as a result of a school closure as of December 31, 2020 are estimated to be between 40 to 50% due to remote learning in emerging market and developing. So for 2009, the Middle East, because you asked me about, you talk about, developing countries. So Middle East and North African region exhibited the largest increase in aid to basic education. So aid for education has increased by 21% over the last 10 years, which translates into annual increase of 2%. However, it is likely to contract as a result of COVID-19, climate change, or the impact of pandemic on household income is likely to reduce the ability to support the costs of education. There's a lot of main topics we have, to concentrate to discuss about the economic impact of COVID-19, climate change, economy, war, the war, the effect of pandemic, on education, the effect of, climate change on education, the effect also of war, the effect of economy, class education, the evolution of SDG4 indicator in all the world, the importance of equity in the education system, cost analysis, in the education sector, cost approaches, to education in low and middle income country. So the technology of the 21st century, can work in many areas: education, health, transportation, energy. So youth, have to learn about this, new technologies, the skills, the coding, or something like that. Also, it will help a lot in poverty, diseases, violence, and mismanagement. So we have to achieve that, in 2030. And I hope that all, participate, like youth, like children, like women, in this new technology. So the real challenge lies in adopting this new technology in the whole world, from Africa, Asia, America, and Australia. And will our current world and our current generation, succeed in generalize this use of this new technology in the world as a whole, from developed country, developing country, and poor countries. This is the biggest challenge, for my opinion, that we are facing. So we have, to transfer what is spent in a weapon, in a war, to spend in, adoption of this new technology to achieve the 17 HG, to face the, corona crisis, climate crisis, all the crises that we face. So, as COVID-19 continued to spread widely, and also we have climate change, economic problem, cloud of everything, technology will help to halt this COVID-19, and we help in all sector, aviation, as a technology gift of the 21st century. For example, blockchain, digital currency, cloud of things, tactile internet, digital twin, IoT, augmented reality, virtual reality. So it will help a lot, in general, help a lot in, for example, it's a key to IT response to climate change, creating smart city, changing healthcare by changing the life of a patient, preventing global warming, reconstruct building after natural disaster, and combating drought, sustainable agriculture, improving the economy level by GDP. Like if you invest like 10 or 20%, it will increase the GDP by 1 or 2%. Improving home healthcare military application. Also, help in achieving the 17 SDG. Also for healthcare, it will help, a lot for banks on diseases, for COVID-19, for Zika virus, to find the infected, cases, learning about the condition, writing about each case, using to sterilize the street and deliver medicine to hospital and food to avoid the infection, measuring fever, temperature, raising awareness of the, danger of COVID-19, diagnostic session of the remote patient, plans, establish of a new health system for each person on a mobile, three colors, green, yellow, and red, allowing green freedom of movement, yellow in a certain place, and red with a guarantee. So COE, cloud of everything, in virus detection and prevention. It will help a lot to know, like we have level like 9 level in the places like places for music, places for a gym, for sports. So to know in each place what's the danger for the virus. Also it will help a lot so the probability of condition is very high. 90% if two person, one healthy and other infected, does not wearing a mask, and 70% if the healthy one wear a mask and the infected one does not wear a mask, and 5% if the infected one wear a mask and the healthy one does not wear a mask. So it will help a lot. For the last example, I'm talking about for aviation, for example, for aviation, 67% of aviation companies think that this new technology will change the field for better, and 37% of organizations have enough funds to implement this technology, allowing saving $30 billion in fuel within 15 years, improving service for air company and airport, improving informing passenger of flight delays, allowing airlines to wait for a delayed flight, opening a new age of passenger transportation, reducing the number of flight delay, and enhancing onboard safety. Life jacket, oxygen mask, and the correct of the airplane can be checked, enable automatic identification, smart ticket, improving procedure of departure, arrival, 5 passenger at the time of departure and arrival, when flight are delayed, enhancing safety. So let me say that, some words about youth and education. So as I told you before, after the flood in Pakistan, when people didn't know where their next meal was coming from, the first thing tossed out the window was education. Global warming is affecting education outcome all over the world, like COVID-19, like economy, like war, and education is critical for effective and sustainable. So education girl has a greater also, education youth has a greater impact on climate change. We need to revise the current circle so that we prepare for the green transition and allow students to, for climate education. That's why, I make a lot of effort regarding, awareness for this new technology that will help a lot in all sectors. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Musa. Professor David J. Kelly, I'm actually a big fan of your work. You already developed your AI, and you want to integrate it, your AI in academics. Uh, we are working with 22,000 institutions, 3 million people. Uh, but still, my people, my community, they are not so advanced what you are producing. Uh, you can explain it, or you can help this community to engage with your projects. And beside that, you can share your views about computer engineering. We have a lot of students. uh, they want to engage with software industry. So this may be helpful for our audience. Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit of a disconnect from the topic that of the discussion in terms of COP27 and education and youth a little bit. I'm honestly not really familiar with the conference too much up until this morning, and I've really tried to hyper focus on just my particular field of research. Uh, I do think that in terms of e-governance and things like that, that certainly collective intelligence can help a lot. But I think the biggest thing for people, if they want to get involved, whether it's climate change or getting AI and technology involved in climate change, is to go and do something and learn. If they want to get involved with what we're doing, it is, you know, I have a hard time struggling to explain what we're doing to academics and computer scientists, never mind people without a technical background. Um, but that notwithstanding, I found the biggest thing you can do is to start a project and do it. If you're interested in climate change and AI, there's lots of free resources. Learn how to do it. It doesn't take a lot of computing power with. I mean, you'll need to get access to a computer and the internet, but uh, by all means, the resources are out there. And if people want to get involved with the research we're doing, feel free to ping me or ping members of my team, and I'm sure there's ways we can get people involved. Um, not, not sure what else you want me to comment on. Like I said, this COP27 is outside my box.
No, it's actually like as UN actually creating focus group discussion like today's session.
Okay.
They developing different kind of institution. They are doing research uh, on SDG, Sustainable Development Goal. I think they have SDG Academy. Uh, World Talent Economy Forum, yes, this why we focusing on COP27. Because uh, developing nations, emerging economy, it has core interest to engage with developed world. Especially climate change is a very big problem for India, Bangladesh, Maldives, Indonesia, this kind of countries. So this time they are negotiating. But fact is that uh, if you ask 90% people what is COP27, or what is the outcome, or what is the benefit, how we engaging with these things, I'm sure they don't know what is happening. So World Talent Economy Forum, as we engage with grassroots level people, we are creating real awareness. Example, recently we face problem with healthcare worker, because when I discuss with NHI, National Healthcare Institutions, regarding the recruitment and everything in UK, they said Bangladesh cannot. So okay, it's a part of education, and I seek help to Professor David Smith, and he is helping the youth community of the healthcare industry. So that is the way of doing work. I know that this kind of big projects and big things need proper outcome. My people, my grassroots level people has to know what is the benefit of educations, what is the benefit of youth, how they can involve. We are creating this kind of awareness, and those who are interested, they can join in our team. That is very open forum. So thank you everyone. Professor David Smith, what you want to add?
Well, Sharif, your comments are right on, and so have been most of the others. I think one of the challenges we have, not just in looking at education around climate initiatives, but looking at education as in general, is how do we capture the interest of people? You've heard me say in the past that we now live in a time of lifelong learning and that our paradigms are very different now. You know, when my parents were alive, their view of education is you went to school, you graduated, and you worked until you retired. Well, that's not the case anymore. You know, we see that everyone is going through multiple job changes, multiple career changes, and that the information half-life of what we've learned is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Uh, I believe the importance of a college degree is even decreasing as we go forward today because of the fact of lifelong learning. Uh, a college degree today is more about the relationships you establish and that you learn learning skills than it is actually the information content, because particularly in engineering and computer science and others, the information you learn as a freshman is often outdated by the time you graduated. So we're seeing that education is at a crossroads. Yesterday, I was on a thing with the newest professor emeritus at the University of Texas at Austin, and he and I got in a discussion that particularly university education hasn't changed much since the time of Socrates, where professors get in front of class, they speak to the students, they give them their wisdom, and that's the education process. But we're at a time now where we're seeing that change. COVID really helped push the changes forward on distance learning, distance education. But we're also seeing more emphasis on boot camps, on coding schools, on just in time education. We're seeing it delivered globally. We're seeing the fact that distributed teams for work are now pushing even more and more of the emphasis and importance of distributed teams for learning and distributed education approaches. If we go back to our prior discussions on COP27, many of those discussions have talked about how there's a need for broader collaboration globally to meet the output from COP27. And education is a prime leader of the needs to enhance that as we go forward. So a lot of overlap, but education is changing. The desires of students and what students desire out of education is changing. And like I said, the biggest change is that we have to change the model from school, work, retirement to a model of lifelong learning. I can tell you my companies, I encourage my people to take classes while they're working. I'll compensate them for example, developing classes. We give them schedules of even current awareness and update things on different online platforms, and it makes a difference. I can tell you the developers, for example, my engineers, my architects who do the additional real-time education are much better than the ones who do not. They know the current techniques, they know the current best practices, and education today is finally moving to where education is being informed by best practices. Education is looking at the diversity of learning styles. And there are many, many different learning styles. Education is looking finally at the fact that most people work in teams in the workplace, but education tends to be singular more than team centric, and that's changing. So a lot of very needed and timely changes are happening in education. And this is one that many of these changes are going to be very supportive, whether you're a developed nation or a developing nation, because the digitization of education is driving the bar down for many. You know, I can, from any place in the world today, uh, access for free most of the resources at Harvard, most of the resources at Stanford, most of the resources at MIT, at University of Texas, at Wharton School at Penn State, and others that a decade ago was out of the question. So education is going through a tremendous transformation at this time, and our youth will be on the forefront of taking advantage of it. And I personally think it's long overdue that education begins to look at how to adapt to the changing global environment, to the fact that the world is real time, the fact that life expectancy has been extending, that our view of work-life balance has dramatically changed. And all of these things are coming into effect to deal with this transformation in education that we're seeing now. So Sharif, I could talk for the next hour about this transformation. I probably should stop there.
Thank, thank you, Professor David Smith. Professor Donald.
Unmute myself here. I have a thing that I've thought for a long, long time is that there's a difference between education and training. Socrates actually didn't lecture to people. Socrates, if you read the dialogue, if you read Plato, the Socratic method was to question people. And Socrates was very vehement about how he knew nothing and that he couldn't teach you anything because he actually didn't know anything. And it's interesting because the schools that they had in Greece at the time were actually about having a better life. That's what they were for. So if you look at things like Pyrrhonic skepticism and Stoicism and things like that, what they were methods of thinking and practicing in the world so that you would have a better life. There's a word for it which I'm forgetting right now because it's all Greek to me. It's a Greek word that just means basically what we would translate maybe now as mindfulness. And so the Stoic belief was the idea that you could it's very much like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the idea that you don't act on the world, you act on your interpretations of the world. And so it wasn't something that you really got lectured about. It was something that you had to learn by doing. And Pyrrhonic skepticism was very much like Buddhism, was the idea that you learn to reserve judgment on all non-evident things, and so on like that. And that's what the schools were in ancient Greece. They weren't trying to teach you things like the way that we teach things now, which I call almost is kind of training. Like we teach people to be able to like follow certain steps and then get a certain result. It's very much kind of comes out of Taylor's idea of it comes from the idea from the Industrial Revolution, the idea that we could be trained like machines into doing things, and so I think that I'm saying the same thing as David in just a different way, is that we've really kind of got to we're getting out of that paradigm, and we can't stay in that paradigm, because if we spend too much time and energy at something that's training ourselves to do something that's salient right now or important right now, by the time we're finished getting really good at it, it's not going to be, what we've learned isn't going to be useful anymore, because things change. And a real goal of education is to be able to kind of see a bigger picture and ask questions and be able to start seeing where things are going, or being able to make sense of things in a way that you can continue to learn and adapt and look at what's around you and say and see to be mindful, to be there, and to be actually noticing what's going on around you, and then being able to start guessing about what kinds of things, where that could lead. So that's where real education comes in. And in my view, we need to keep the kinds of things that increase creativity. And it's interesting, because if you look at people's brains, listening to music lights up your whole brain. And what that means is that your brain is establishing neural connections throughout your brain, listening to music. So actually listening to music, it kind of expands your mind. And the thing that really lights up your brain is playing music. And I've got quite a few studies that show that people who play music and then go into some other profession are better at the other profession. They're more creative and things like that. I have some other papers that show that people who've lived in a foreign country for a year or two score about twice as high on measures of creativity than people who haven't done that. So the kinds of things that create a good education are actually something people have known a long time. I mean, back in the Victorian times and things like that, people would take a year abroad and things like that to be able to get a good education. Stanford right now has this program that they're trying to implement, that someday they hope all students will do, where every student takes a gap year and they go to some place that needs help. So some students have gone to Chicago and they've worked with, to South Chicago, and they've worked with helping educate people, or people have gone to help fix water systems. They've gone to Guatemala, they've gone to Africa, they've gone to all kinds of places, and they've spent a year living with people and working with people who actually need their help. And well, nobody's the same afterwards. And so that, you think of people at Stanford as just these privileged, whatever kind of people that you almost look down on because they're so privileged and that. But after they've done that for a year, it changes them. So that's a kind of something about education that you don't really think of when you're thinking about training people to do software and hardware. Obviously, people need to do jobs and to do work, but what I'm getting at is that we also have to be a little bit careful, because we can teach people to do some certain specific skill, but it's kind of rapid that skill can go out of date. I mean, there's people all over Silicon Valley in their 50s who can't get work anymore because they're experts at some programming language or some sort of systems and things like that are out of date, and nobody is willing to train them into something new because they're old. They're at their age. Investing in their training wouldn't get a return on investment for the companies because they wouldn't, work long enough for them that it's worth it for them to do it. And so that speaks to what David is saying about lifelong learning, about how incredibly important it is to try and keep up on skills. But even so, people just won't believe you. I mean, people, they may have the skills, but oh well. I mean, at your age, people. So that's not about youth necessarily, but how we look at education. What I'm really saying is that how we look at education, we have to step back and think about it from a larger perspective. And I totally agree with Sharif that the developed world has an obligation well, Sharif didn't say obligation, but I feel that we have an obligation to really be helping the developing world. And that's what I was saying about the trying to help the Syrian refugees. And the way I tie this all together is if we are trying to help the Syrian refugees or some other place in the developed world that doesn't have the computers, doesn't have the power, doesn't have the things that they need to be able to actually learn the things that we're trying to teach them, it's useful that we really need to help provide those things for them so that they can do it. But we also have to be mindful of the fact that they're super aware of their world, and they're super aware of what kinds of things that they can do and are important to them. And so we have to understand how we can learn from them and be able to help provide things, not just the things we think they should have, but we also have to learn what the things that are going to work for them in the long term, not short-term things where they can do a task for a while, then that task isn't needed anymore, and then they're out of luck. What we really need to do is figure out ways that we can work together with them to figure out things that we can do so that people can have sustainable education. And I think it's a really interesting and exciting thing to do, but we need to step outside of just technology to do it.
Thank you, Professor Donald, for your excellent analysis. I use one method in my personal life. Let's say I have money. If I give money, I will lose money. I have asset. If I share my asset, I will lose my asset. But education is something interesting. You have knowledge. The more you share, you will gain more knowledge. The more you share, you will gain more knowledge. That's why we develop World Talent Economy Forums. And trust me, we get millions of people engagement with the World Talent Economy Forum. Only this is very simple method. The more we share our knowledge increase and we become the leaders. So I request all of the developed nations people. I know there are many research labs. I'm not mention anything to Professor David J. Kelly, but many research lab, many things. But what is the impact? If it's not helpful for people, if people do not get benefit from your knowledge, what is the impact? So that's why we are actually creating impact. We are engaging with people with our knowledge. So I want to give thanks to all of our speakers. Almost every day they join, they share their views, they share their
Sharif,
knowledge.
let me say one thing. I just want to say one thing. Thomas Jefferson said that if I light if I use my candle to light yours, we've created more light and it costs me nothing. So that's what you're saying. He's talking about sharing knowledge. He says, if I use my candle to light yours, there's more light and it's cost me nothing. So there.
Yes.
I just
yes.
wanted
Thank
to
you,
support
Professor
what you
Uddin,
said.
for your excellent guideline and support. Dr. Musa.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Sharif. I enjoy speaking. I enjoy listening to what you said, you and Dr. Donald and all the amazing speaker. And I would like to add something that the best people in all the world is the one who, give benefit to people, not as the one who owns everything. So that's how I would like to say. Uh, let me say, about uh, education. It's about education. If there's, they say that if there's was one seed to prevent, climate change, to prevent war, to prevent racism, to prevent, economic crisis, to prevent COVID-19, to violence, to conflict, or poverty, it was education. So education is, so important. Now I'm talking about what's happening in COP27 regarding to youth and education. So let me say that all development can't happen because of what's happened due to the operationalized of loss and damage found. That's something good, but also we have to concentrate in parallel about education, about empower youth, empower women, to about science. That's what if you have like science and we have finance or money, so we can do something better regarding the climate crisis, regarding COVID-19, regarding all things. So I think starting from like October, I think 2022 before COP27, there's I think there's a lot of meeting for youth in all the world and organizer of COP27 and a lot of discussion because they are looking for a good role for youth, for a good role for women, to participate in COP27 because I think climate crisis is something very important for the new generation, for the future generation, because they are the one who stay more, in this, crisis. And so I say that a lot of, things, go unfinished. For example, like war, like economy crisis, like COVID-19. But for climate change, stay with us for forever. I hope that we can prevent it or reduce it to the 1.5 degree. So regarding in COP27, a lot of research and world leader, and there's a hub, for education hub for Babylon hubs that I talked about yesterday, and this hub will be the first of its kind space to encourage dialogue, innovation, and the plans to integrate diverse, actors from education and the climate sectors. This, help, regarding that. Also, we have to consider also about green education. The must, materials, in the schools, in a college, in a job regarding this green education, regarding climate crisis, regarding, awareness, to increase awareness in all developed country. Like, you said that if you ask like 100% about, climate change, maybe, less, less numbers, know about this culture. So we need to make awareness, in all the world regarding this climate change in materials, in a job, in a lot of things. So I think, we require the knowledge, skills, value, and attitude to tackle this climate change. For example, UNESCO also, made a lot of survey with youth regarding this climate change to know about, the role, of the youth, what do you think about this climate change. So young people always just got a louder voice on climate change in COP27, and I hope that for COP20 it will be for better. So COP27 was another milestone for young climate, activists as they become official climate policy stakeholder. They are not looking, the youths are not looking to participate in a meeting or in a decision maker or something like that, but they are looking, in all organizer that the youth will have, a role, in this organizer. So COP27, as I said, was, another milestone for the youth official recognition as a stakeholder in the action, ACE, it means action plans, gives young people, a lot of, role regarding to climate change. So this, as action plan, for climate empower, and, for example, in, Paris Agreement in 2015, there's, item 12 about improving education and awareness around the climate change by making research. That's why there's education hub or Buffalo hub about that. So strengthening this aids in climate policy means better participation, of years, in this COP27 and COP28. So for the climate policy, official stakeholder means young people, get a bigger seat, at the table. Because I think climate change, youth must care about it, because they will stay more than, old people in this, crisis. So we have to concentrate about youth. For example, what took part in UN Youth Climate Summit are made, as active like 19 years old, research political leadership position, 28. A lot of, leader from Germany, from different country regarding this, Green Party. So COP27, allowed, official youth representative, for example, one Omnia, something like that, fight for the inclusion of young people voices, and the launch of a climate, youth negotiator program that aim to empower young climate. A lot of, I think, try in COP27 regarding youth, regarding to education. So the goal, for this, young people youth to be at the center, of policy making. And they are right, like women also, because women, face a lot due to, climate change consequence. So when we talk about representation, we don't just want, international negotiation, but also they want all levels, at government, at the organization to be, conclude, on all meetings, on all work that. So yes, it's more ambitious and, outcome if we, let them participate, in all events, like that. So education also, for effective, climate action, education, like, strongest predictor of climate change awareness. Young people, and the children are fully empowered stakeholder in building this climate change resilience and creating a greener future. That's why you have to let them participate, in this, crisis. So youth demand the quality climate change education. So they are looking, for that. And UNESCO, survey 17,000, Circum components. UNESCO organized a survey, and young people from 166 countries, all over the world. The survey, output reveals that 27% of respondents cannot explain what climate change is. 41% can only explain the broad principle, and 2% don't know anything about it. That's why you have more education for this youth, for the woman, for all, for awareness, as all speakers, confirm about that. The youth are also bored of passive learning and creative foster about climate change. 60% of young people survey notes that they learn about climate change in a classroom. Many wanted to go beyond the school world to learn. So they know something practical, experiment, project, or something like that, including work with local organization and experts. So creating poster and painting about climate change. 77% strongly agree that climate change should be taught by people from various backgrounds. For example, that's what happened, today. So young people are expressed desire to learn, who bears the historical responsibility for climate change, to know everything about the climate change. And it's our role to let him, know everything about, climate change. Let them participate, and we have to concentrate also about, education. So education will help a lot, not only in climate change, in COVID-19, in economy crisis, in to fight racism, to fight war, to go to peace. That's why we have to go in education and youth. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor David Jekali, what's your concluding remarks for today's sessions? And we want one of your guidelines which will provide us a syllabus for our students for computer engineering from our institutions. Definitely, we're gonna teach more students, and you can be our faculty.
You want me to provide a syllabus
Yes.
for what specifically? I mean, computer science is a pretty broad field.
Computer science, specifically artificial intelligence.
Okay. Okay, I can produce a syllabus for you in something to do with AI. I think one thing I'd like to comment on is this idea of learning beyond school. I think Donald and David Smith both mentioned it. Nowadays, really in computer technical engineering fields, it's got to be a lifelong journey. You can't just learn a skill and stick with that till retirement. I mean, you're not going to be able to make it in the way that everything is evolving. Like in computer science, for example, if you learn a skill now, 3 years from now, it's outdated. And the stuff they teach in school is just completely irrelevant in terms of the technologies. I mean, I'm for many years, I haven't, if you're a new graduate out of school, I'm completely uninterested in talking to you. I just don't have the time or patience to train anyone. That said, the couple of people that I have hired that were out of college were people that went out of their way and did something. Like a kid that he ripped out the dashboard of his car and had this huge touch panel display he built and programmed himself. And it to me, it's not about your degrees or your certifications. If you go and do something, write a program, I'm going to hire you for things like that. And I think those are the people that are most successful, that enjoy what they're doing and that get into this habit of lifelong learning, where they're always learning a new skill, they're always improving what they know and learning the next more improved thing. And so I encourage people to do that.
So thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for joining today's sessions. I request all of our audience, please share our content with your friends, with your family, with your institution. It will be helpful for everyone. Thank you, Professor David Jekali, Professor Donald, and Dr. Musa for your continuous support for World Health and Economic Forum. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.